Now that we've learned the different types of elasticity of demand that we may encounter, it's interesting to try to think about what kind of good fits in what category. What would we expect of a certain good? Would we expect it to be elastic, very, very responsive to a change in price, or inelastic, unresponsive to a change in price? And to what extent, to what degree? Is it going to have a massive response, or extremely small response, or an intermediate response? It's very hard to know. However, based on the type of product that we are discussing about, it's quite interesting and it's quite easy to know in which category this good would be. First off, the availability of substitutes will have a massive impact on whether the good is elastic or inelastic, whether people are responsive or not. And if we think of goods that have very close substitutes, such as Pepsi and Coca-Cola, some people prefer one to the other, but if ever one of the two were to increase its prices by 50%, while the other one is not changing its prices, we would probably see a lot of people transfer. Therefore, this change in price leads to a big response. The quantity demanded for the good that has gone up in price will drop dramatically because there is a substitute available. So the more substitutes exist, the more responsive people will be and will simply switch to another alternative. However, when you're stuck in a bad situation where you only have one choice, you often end up paying the price, even though it increases. And an example of that could be when we think about gasoline. When we think about gasoline, if the prices go from $1.20 to $1.50 a liter, we may reduce our consumption a little bit, but if we still have to make it to work, to school, or to anything else, we're definitely going to keep driving our car, at least in the short term. Necessities versus luxuries will also tell us whether we're in the elastic or inelastic range. If you think about it, necessities, you need it. Therefore, if you need it, if the price changes, you're probably going to keep on buying it. If you really need your pills, or if you really need a certain type of product, you're in a third world country, you don't have access to clean water, and you buy bottled water or something else, well, if the price goes up, you're probably going to keep on paying. You're going to start looking for alternatives, but you're in that kind of situation that's a little tricky. Luxuries, on the other hand, are something that you don't necessarily need, so that heli ski ride, or that special trip, or that bottle of wine, or that ring, or something else, if it goes up in price dramatically, you might just treat yourself to something else. So if that trip becomes very expensive, well, you might buy yourself a new mountain bike or something else instead to enjoy time around home. Otherwise, what else? Well, the definition of the market will have a big impact. So here we're not really talking about whether the good is elastic or inelastic. It's just this idea that depending on how you define the good in question, it's going to make it in the situation that you have more or less alternatives. So in a simple way, if I think about food in general, like food is very broadly defined. So therefore, I can't substitute away food for something else. I can't say food's getting too expensive, I'm going to buy more video games or something else to as an alternative. You have to eat. Therefore, food is very broad, and very broad means that you have to keep purchasing it even if it goes up in price. Therefore, it's inelastic. You're unresponsive to a change in price. However, as you define the good a little bit more narrowly, the more narrow you go, the more alternatives there is. Chicken, from food, I could go a little bit more narrow and say, let's talk about meat or protein type products. So that would be a little bit more narrowly defined, a little bit more response. You might start consuming other products. Then if I say chicken, well, chicken is a little bit more narrowly defined, so I have alternatives in terms of pork, soy, beef, other things like that, fish. And then if I want to move even deeper with chicken, I could say, well, chicken breast or chicken wings or something else. And then I can move even deeper and say a specific brand of chicken breast or something else. Well, as soon as you talk about a very specific brand of chicken breast, if that goes up in price, well, you have all the other brands of chicken breast available. You have all the other meats available. You have everything else. Therefore, at that point, because you're talking about something super narrowly defined, there's a lot of substitutes available. Therefore, that is more responsive to a change in price. But if ever the government were to put on a tax on all meat or on all food, well, you don't really have a choice. You can't really substitute away. But if the government were to tax specifically chicken that is not organic or something else, well, then you'll see substitution happening. Something else that has a big impact on price elasticity of demand is time horizon. The shorter time span you have, the less you will be able to respond. So if you're take a trip with some friends in a certain area and you go to the grocery store and for some reason the prices are super high, well, if you have to eat, you're still going to buy those products. If you go back or if the time horizon keeps going, you might decide, I'm just going to bring my groceries from my initial location and I won't purchase as much there, so your quantity demanded will fall because the price has gone up, so you're going to become more responsive to a change in price. Same thing with if we're thinking about oil, or here I have an example of electricity. When I think about oil, I have a situation that maybe right now if the price of gasoline goes up, I'm still going to purchase roughly the same amount. But if the price of gasoline doubles, I might switch my very fuel guzzling car to a more efficient car, to an electric car, or I might simply move closer to work, find different ways around so I don't have to consume as much gasoline. But this would happen over a longer course of time. You don't switch cars instantly, or you don't move instantly at any point in the year. It might not be worthwhile, but over time you will adjust. So a lot of articles, such as some that we might see in this class, deal with gasoline being an inelastic good. It's true, it's inelastic in the short run. However, in the long run, if it were to reach a really high point, it would not be seen as completely inelastic. It would have some response coming over time. And durable versus non-durable goods. So durables have a more elastic demand based on the fact that if a price of a certain good that you could buy goes down and that good could last just about forever, well, if you're thinking over this next year, I want to buy a mountain bike or something else, and you know you're going to keep it for 5 years or more, and you see this sale coming, even though it's middle of winter, if you see like this massive sale, 50% off, you're very likely going to buy it, store it, and keep it for later on. Same thing with different types of canned foods. You could think about that as well. However, if it's the summertime and the price of green peppers is much lower than in the wintertime, you might buy a little bit more, but you're not going to stock up unless you like to make different types of relish or something else, like different types of products using that vegetable, which could be then conserved. Most people will typically not see their consumption go up that much of non-durable goods. You're not going to respond too much, simply for the fact that if you buy too much of it as the price goes down, you'll simply fall in a situation that you're going to waste a lot. So things that last, like toilet paper or anything else, typically you'll see when there's a sale at the grocery store, people will stock up on. Things that don't necessarily last, people won't stock up that much of those goods. Okay. Proportion of your income also has an impact on your responsiveness. If something's very big in proportion to your total income, such as buying a house or a car, and that goes up by 50%, 100%, you're likely your consumption is going to alter dramatically. But if you look at something such as oranges, or I often look at avocados or something else, avocados could be $1 one week, could be $1.50, $2 at different grocery stores. If you go to the grocery store thinking I'm going to make this salad and I need avocados for it, and you get there and it's $1 more, you might not change all your plans about buying an avocado. You might simply buy it, and some of you might not even notice the price. You're like, I want an avocado, and you just grab it. So in that situation, because it's a small share of your income, a big change in price might not have a big impact on your demand unless you start shopping and then you start looking at alternatives, but still overall for the whole population won't have a big impact. However, for large ticket items, if you have a big change in price, you're going to fall in a situation where it's going to lead to a big change in consumption or a big change in quantity demanded. So people are very responsive. So these slides were just simply to kind of go over the idea that different types of goods may have different responsiveness to a change in price depending on how they are. And you can think about some of these goods and how they might change as new technologies roll in. If ever we end up with hydrogen or something else that could potentially replace gasoline in cars, or if we have better battery technologies or something else, and it makes it easier to buy an electrical car, well, we could think that the idea that gasoline does not have many substitutes may no longer be true. So it's keeping all of that in mind. We could kind of see how responsiveness will change.